The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. Chapter 31. It was quiet inside Neptune's Cove. The lights were not even on. The dim interior was a huge contrast to the bright sunlight outside. Just as Kiran was growing accustomed to the darkness, someone suddenly turned on the lights in Neptune's Cove, and a huge group of people appeared in front of Kiran. Their presence alone was so imposing that a normal person would cave to the pressure. There was a stage in the center. On it was a chair, and sitting on it was a cold-faced man. He had a scar on his left cheek, and it looked like a huge mouth. It made him look fierce and savage. Kiran sensed the man's gaze trained on him, and he looked over to meet his gaze. The man had initially been sitting in the chair in a relaxed fashion, but he suddenly sat up a little straighter, and a strange look crossed his eyes. However, it vanished in the next instant. His gaze turned even more sinister than before. Victor, Montel, and the rest of their group came in. Victor immediately put on a smile and gave the man a check. "Mr. Onyx, here's $10 million from Prospera Group." Onyx did not even look up, but Victor just obediently put the check into the box next to Onyx. "Mr. Onyx, here's $10 million from Cloud Corporation. Here's $10 million from Shine Corporation." More than 20 companies offered up checks. In the blink of an eye, they had already given Onyx more than $200 million. Onyx remained seated in the chair on the stage. His expression became one of calmness, which made the scar on his face look like it was smiling. He pointed at the stage. "Get up here. If you stand on higher ground, I can see you clearly." He spoke in such a relaxed fashion, as if he was in control of their lives. "Thank you, Mr. Onyx," Victor took the lead and shouted. When Montel saw hundreds of glorious security bodyguards in Neptune's Cove, he became even more confident and gave Kiran a scornful look. "You want $1 billion from me? You're going to work really hard to get it. I bet you're only so stupidly fearless because you're ignorant, peasant," Quiney yelled at Kiran harshly. The others said nothing, but their gazes were filled with mockery and disdain. In their eyes, the Xander family was playing with fire. Their act of asking them to pay their debt was just going to bankrupt Xander Corporation even faster. The people went up to the stage and looked down. The hundreds of glorious security employees looked imposing. They seemed as numerous as the stars in the sky. Kiran was like a lone star among them. It was like he was about to have his light extinguished at a moment's notice. Montel and Kieni felt smug. Both of them eagerly looked forward to Kiran getting beaten up. The other creditors also looked smug and scornful. Victor was already dreaming about getting back the $200 million he lost yesterday. Meanwhile, Onyx looked down at Kiran like a king would at his kingdom. Kiran remained calm and looked up at Onyx. "Your glorious securities CEO? Show some respect when you speak to Mr. Onyx." Onyx's employees shouted loudly. Their voices were like a torrential wave that sounded really awe-inspiring. Victor and the others felt their hearts tremble as they thought, "I shouldn't get on Onyx and Glorious Security's bad side." "Onyx," Kiran snickered and stared at Onyx's face. He asked, "Shall we see whether you're as tough as a real Onyx?" Was Kiran threatening Onyx? Victor and the others quickly covered their mouths to stop themselves from gasping. They would never dare to threaten Onyx. "Die!" Glorious Security's employees burst into a ruckus and were eager to attack Kiran, but Onyx narrowed his eyes and stopped them. He also motioned for them to keep their mouths shut. "Mr. Onyx, that fucker over there demanded that I pay him $100 million whenever I yelled at him. If I don't pay him, he's going to break my fingers. The others also have to pay him 4 times their original debt. He's really arrogant." Montel seized the opportunity to fan the flames. Onyx's expression turned dark, and his scar looked incredibly fearsome. It looked like a wild beast opening its mouth wide. Chapter 32. The glorious security employees moved when they saw Onyx's reaction. They spread out slowly and filled up every inch of Neptune's Cove to make sure no one could escape. All they needed at the moment was Onyx's order before they attacked. "Your name?" Onyx demanded as he looked at Kiran. "My name?" Kiran sneered. "Your maker." "Mr. Onyx," the glorious security employees shouted as they straightened up. "Just kill him." Onyx's gaze turned fierce, but he stopped them from attacking Kiran as he stared at him. "You're Kiran York. I know this. You looked into me?" Kiran smiled and nodded as a sign of praise. "You're smart." but he sounded like he was mocking him, which only made the glorious security employees even madder. However, Onyx remained calm and stared at Kiran. "You might be strong, but you can't win against the local powerhouses, young man. This is simple logic. You've only just arrived in Bayville. You should be staying in your own lane." With a sneer, Kiran responded, "Have you never heard of the strong being able to do whatever they want because they're strong? You're strong? Ha ha, you're just a weakling to Mr. Onyx," Montel said and laughed. "You're like a pebble to him," Quiney also said rudely. The people laughed. To them, Kiran was just an ant they could squash under their feet at any moment. "You married Snow Xander because you saved Harold Xander, didn't you?" Onyx remained patient and asked. While they were curious, they did not interrupt Onyx and let him continue asking his questions. Kiran smiled. "That is my business with the Xander family. It has nothing to do with you." Onyx stared at Kiran for a few more seconds before he smiled. "It does have nothing to do with me, but I don't want to kill someone for no reason, hence the questions." Kiran then said, "Are you done then?" Onyx nodded. "Now I'll give you a choice," Kiran said imposingly. "What is it?" Onyx asked curiously. "Give me the money they just gave you. Also, every single one of your employees has to pay me $1 million. Then, I'll let all of you go safely. Otherwise." Kiran did not finish his sentence, but the meaning was clear. He was going to cripple the people here. "Mr. Onyx," the glorious security employees shouted. They were about to lose their minds to rage. The atmosphere in Neptune's Cove became tense. Montel and Kiran were already trembling with excitement and were waiting for Onyx to order his employees to attack Kiran. Meanwhile, Kiran looked at the employees arrogantly. "Where's the one whose arm I broke yesterday? Have you forgotten what happened to him?" The imposing employees froze for a second. But Onyx's expression turned incredibly cold. "You marched in here acting all smug after hurting my employee. Do you really think all of my employees are weak?" Victor and the rest then regained their arrogance and scoffed at Kiran. Their disdain made the glorious security employees fired up. The moment they longed for was finally here. But Kiran sneered. They had truly underestimated him. "They followed my car yesterday, and I was only giving them a warning in self-defense." Kiran stared at Onyx. "Also, aren't you supposed to be the underworld ruler here? Why are you acting like someone else's lapdog?" "It's unbecoming." Onyx's expression changed again. "All you have is your arrogance, it seems. I'll give you one chance. Break your hands and climb out. Then, I'll spare you." "You should thank Mr. Onyx for his mercy," Montel shouted and stomped his feet. Kiran snickered. "I refuse," Onyx scoffed. "You'll have to break your legs as well now." "Do you think you can push me around just because you have numbers on your side?" Kiran asked mysteriously. "This world is ruled by the law of the jungle, and being weak is a sin." Onyx looked into the distance. "Even the York family, as strong as they were, fell to a large number of people who banded together to fight against them 20 years ago. What does that have to do with me?" Kiran then flipped him the bird with both hands. Chapter 33. "He's so arrogant, Mr. Onyx. Stop wasting your breath on him. Just break his legs and throw him into the ocean." Montel and the others started fanning the flames by shouting these things. The glorious security employees were also really agitated. They had always been the ones pushing people around and looking down on others. No one had ever looked down on them like this before, and he even did it in front of so many CEOs in Bayville. These CEOs were people who had to give them protection rackets. If they were really going to just lie down and take such insults, their dignity would vanish. Onyx said nothing, but his gaze was razor-sharp. His scar quivered, and it looked like a raging beast. Kiran pulled his hands back and shot forward like an arrow. Before the employee in front of him could even see what had happened, he felt a sharp sting on his face, and he was thrown off his feet. Kiran then turned around, raised his arms, and swung them. The employees beside him fell to the floor as if a wind had swept them off their feet. Their jaws had already been dislocated, and they could not even scream. With a few kicks, another 8 people were defeated. All this happened far too suddenly and quickly. The glorious security employees had not even realized what was going on. Kiran attacked far too quickly. He moved like lightning. Montel and the rest were dumbfounded. He actually attacked? Queenie voiced everyone's thoughts. "Is he an idiot? Does he really want to fight against hundreds of people alone?" Montel cried out. "He's..." Really good, Victor said when he remembered what happened to his bodyguards. A chill ran down his spine. The others said nothing, but they felt as if they had been forced to swallow their words about Kiran just now. They had not expected Kiran to be so brave and domineering despite being a poor peasant. Their hearts hammered anxiously in their chests. Meanwhile, Onyx widened his eyes. A strange look appeared in his eyes. It was as if he was delighted. Kiran stood where he was while he stared at the dumbfounded, glorious security employees. If your boss pays $1 million for each of you, I can let you walk out without taking a beating. Otherwise, he pointed at the wounded on the floor, you'll end up like them. His voice was loud and domineering. It echoed for a long time in the room. The glorious security employees felt as if someone was playing drums loudly beside their ears. The sight of the broken limbs also gave them a terrible shock. When they remembered how the leader yesterday had been thrown into the ocean, their hearts trembled, and they looked scared. While they were hesitating, someone suddenly jumped down from the stage. The glorious security employees quickly moved away, but Kiran did not. He threw a punch. The sound of wood shattering rose, followed by a clear snap of bone. Irk! A pained grunt could be heard. Everyone looked over. Onyx's right arm was broken, and the white, broken bone pierced through his flesh. Blood poured out of his wound, and his face was covered in sweat. Meanwhile, Kiran remained as calm and unperturbed as ever. The people felt their skins crawl. Quiney even had to bite down on her lip to prevent herself from screaming. Montel felt as if his heart was about to leap out of his chest. Victor was even beginning to regret his decision. He should not have tried to take revenge on Kiran. He was just too strong. If you want to fight, come at me. If you don't, surrender, Kiran shouted. He let his hands hang by his sides. The people fell silent. After a full minute, Onyx shouted, "You have a death wish for challenging us, boy." While cradling his broken arm, he looked at his employees. Anyone who manages to hit him gets a bonus of $1 million, and anyone who kills him gets $1 billion. Kiran remained still in the face of his threat, but the glorious security employees did not move either. Chapter 34. Onyx felt as if he had just wasted his breath. Even so, he did not want to just accept defeat. So, he stood up and wanted to continue shouting at his employees. Kiran smiled and walked over to Onyx. Onyx wanted his employees to do something, but they were shocked stiff because of how strong Kiran was. He did not know what to say about this. Kiran arrived next to Onyx and slapped him. It left a red handprint on his face. Onyx saw stars and his ears rang, but he still refused to admit defeat. "Fight all of them if you dare. Fight all of them." Kiran sneered and looked at the people in disdain. "They're not worth it." Onyx then shut his eyes as they burned with murderous rage, but he looked upset and felt horrible. He had been thoroughly humiliated today, but he would not take this lying down. He had to redeem himself. He looked at his employees. Anyone who hits him gets a bonus of 10 million, and anyone who kills him gets a bonus of 10 billion. He was offering huge amounts of money as a reward for killing Kiran. "Right then," Montel shouted, "I'll offer an additional reward of 1 billion. Kiran hated him, and if he managed to terrify these people into not attacking him, he was going to be the first to suffer. "We'll offer a reward of 10 billion, Victor shouted readily. The other CEOs could already see that things were going badly for them, so they nodded in agreement to offer the reward if the employees attacked Kiran together. After all, no matter how good of a fighter Kiran was, he could not win against hundreds of people. An idiot like Kiran was surely going to die here. Hence, they were willing to pay these employees just to make sure Kiran died. Kiran remained calm and scoffed at all that was happening around him. But murderous rage and bloodthirst grew in his heart. He had been practicing medicine and martial arts in the mountains, and his martial arts was better than his skills in medicine. Considering the fact that he knew both medicine and martial arts, it was obvious just how strong he was. However, he had wanted to hold back and not show his full strength. More importantly, his master had always told him not to commit mass murder. He said that Kiran had a bomb within him. If it was ever detonated, he would end up becoming a murderous fiend. Plenty of people were going to die if he did end up going all out. Hence, whenever he fought, he always held back. But he faced a lot of enemies today, and a murderous intent rose in him. The more he fought, the less he held back. His fighting spirit burned in him like fire, and he felt like he was about to explode like a bomb. He needed an outlet to release all the pent-up murderous rage. The glorious security employees had also become really excited. If they killed Kiran, they would get $20 billion as a bonus. This gamble was worth it. They grew restless, and they started breaking the tables and chairs in Neptune's Cove in order to use the steel or wooden legs of the furniture as weapons. In order to intimidate Kiran and boost their own morale, they even knocked the furniture legs together. They looked like fearsome wolves with their weapons. Even if Kiran was a tiger, so long as they fought with everything they had, they could still kill the tiger. Victor, Montel, and the others sighed in relief. To them, Kiran was done for. "Attack!" Onyx shouted. The employees no longer hesitated. They swung their weapons and charged at Kiran. Kiran shot forward into the crowd like an arrow and knocked down Onyx as well as a dozen other employees. His ferocity made the employees even more heated up. They shouted, "Kill him!" They swung their weapons and were filled with murderous intent. Kiran was feeling murderous himself, and his eyes burned with rage. Die! Chapter 35. Kiran charged at the employees like a raging tiger, but his expression was one of calmness and fearlessness. The murderous rage in him gave him an endless supply of energy and fearlessness, even as if he faced attacks from hundreds of people. More than 10 employees closed in on Kiran, but before their weapons could touch Kiran, they were already thrown off their feet. When they crashed on the floor, their bones snapped. Multiple people were knocked off and sent crashing on the floor. It was chaotic. One of the employees swung a metal rod at Kiran, but he dodged it. He grabbed the metal rod and pulled it over along with the employee. Then, he started hitting the pitiful employee multiple times with the rod. That employee fainted before he could even scream in pain. Immediately after, Kiran swung the rod and hit multiple people. With the rod in hand, he was like a god of war. His eyes had become bloodshot as he walked forward calmly. With each step he took, he defeated another person. But he was never injured, and he did not even shed a single drop of blood. Onyx was first dumbstruck at the sight, but that strange delight soon returned to his eyes. Fortunately, no one saw it, or they would think that he had lost his mind. Montel and the rest were shocked. They looked like they had just seen a ghost. Kiran was like a monster. They could not even see his attacks clearly. They had thought that Kiran would get beaten up, but the hundreds of employees were the ones getting beaten up instead, and they had even started running for their lives. "Have I lost my mind? Is that why I'm seeing things?" Queenie asked. Her voice cut through the wave of screams in the room and made plenty of them calm down. Once the glorious security employees calmed down, fear rose in their hearts. Fighting against a whole group of people was nothing to Kiran. Plenty of them began retreating in fear. "Go on, come at me." Kiran looked at the employees who were frozen and shouted at them. But those employees did not attack him. Instead, in their fear, they dropped their weapons and they fell to the floor with loud clattering sounds. Montel and the rest felt chills crawl down their spines. They were scared because Kiran had already made the remaining employees terrified of him. Onyx concealed the strange delight in his eyes and looked at his employees in anger. "Attack! Kill him!" But no one moved. Instead, some of them were retreating. Kiran swung the rod in his hand and made it seem like he was about to advance on them again. Some of the glorious security employees were so scared that they fell on their knees. Those sounds made many others fall to their knees as well. It was as if Kiran had triggered a domino effect. The room fell silent. Kiran looked at Onyx. "Why don't you attack me?" Onyx took an instinctive step back with fear on his face. But Kiran's bloodthirst had not been quenched. While murderous intent burned in his eyes, he walked over to Onyx. This terrified Onyx so much that he moved back and put his hands in front of him as if to ward off Kiran. "Don't come any closer, Kiran lifted Onyx up into the air. "Ah!" Onyx screamed and kicked the air. Then, Kiran threw him to the stage like a ball. "Eek!" The creditors on the stage screamed and moved away. When Onyx fell on the stage, practically all his bones were broken. "Does anyone still want to pick a fight with me?" Kiran sucked in a deep breath to control the murderous rage in him. He then looked at the people on stage coldly. "Go on and call for more backup." "More backup?" Montel and the others looked at the hundreds of glorious security employees lying or kneeling under the stage, and they shook their heads. They did not dare to. Even if they did, who would they call? Where could they find backup? They simply could not understand why Kiran was so strong. Onyx cradled his broken arm and got to his feet while he glared at Kiran. What are you planning to do? Kiran snickered. You're such idiots. None of them dared to retort. Chapter 36. Kiran pointed at himself and declared, I want to collect the money owed to the Xander family. Several of the creditors fell on their butts. Back then, they were not scared when they owed Xander Corporation money. But they were scared now. They were terrified of Kiran smashing their heads in with the rod. Till give it back to you. Dorian Zachman, Shine Corporation's CEO, was the first to speak. Montel's face was pale, and the thought of having to return $1 billion was painful to him. The other people looked at each other and were conflicted. Kiran looked at Victor. You owed Xander Corporation $50 million. How much did you give me yesterday? Victor felt even more nervous when Kiran talked to him. He wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead and mumbled, $2 billion. And you can't accept this result, can you? Kiran asked. Victor shook his head rapidly out of fear. I'm perfectly fine with it. If you are, transfer Prospera Group to me, Kiran announced. Victor was stunned, silent. He pulled a long face, and the thought of losing his company plunged him into despair. Regret filled his heart. The others did not know Kiran's strength, so they had challenged him. He knew how strong Kiran was, but he still challenged him. He was such an idiot. He looked at Kiran pitifully, but Kiran ignored him. I'll transfer it to you. Victor bowed his head in defeat. Kiran had asked for 4 times his original debt as a warning, and he demanded his company today as punishment. Kiran was not a man to be trifled with. The people fell silent again. I'll return 4 times my original debt, Dorian cried out. His words caused a chain reaction. The people began declaring that they would return 4 times their original debt as well. In the past, they had refused to clear their debt, even if Xander Corporation only asked for the principal sum. But at present, they were willing to pay back 4 times their debt just so they could live. It could not be helped. Humans were just shameless creatures that way. Even though 4 times their original debt was a high sum, it was better than losing their companies. Kiran was satisfied. He looked at Onyx. Collect the money from them. I'm going to check later. Onyx trembled and nodded. Kiran then directed his gaze at Montel. When he sensed Kiran looking at him, Montel hunched his shoulders and just wished he could turn himself invisible so that Kiran could not see him. With a sneer, Kiran looked at the glorious security employees on the floor. Did Montel Ziegler say that he was going to reward you with $1 billion if you killed me just now? The glorious security employees did not understand what Kiran was trying to do, but they would not have stupidly attacked Kiran if not for the reward. They nodded. At the same time, they glared at Montel with rage and hatred. Montel was so terrified his face turned pale as a sheet. $1 billion plus 10 fingers, Kiran declared coldly. Montel shivered in fear. Can I just give you $2 billion? $2 billion plus 10 toes, Kiran continued. Montel fainted. The glorious security employees went on the stage to pick him up. Kiran then looked at the dumbfounded Quaini. And you like buttering up to people, don't you? Before Quaini could figure out what was going on, she was dragged off the stage as well. Soon, Montel and Quaini's terrified screams rose from the back of the room. But the woman's voice was a little strange. Anyhow, 15 minutes later, while cradling his broken arm, Onyx placed a stack of checks in front of Kiran and pointed at them. There's a total of $10 billion here. Good. I wish you luck in your future ventures. Kiran picked up the checks and looked at the others. But if you want to target the Xander family again, you'll have to go through me. He then left. All that remained in the room was a group of dumbfounded people. Hope flashed in Onyx's eyes. The York family had a descendant. Would the York family declare their return during the dinner party of the 3 big families tomorrow? Chapter 37. Kiran wanted to put the checks away once he got out of Neptune's Cove, but he saw a line of words written on the very first check. Onyx was the one who left the message. Kiran was surprised, and he scanned Neptune's Cove. The place was still as quiet as ever, but he could see Onyx staring at him with bright eyes. Curious, Kiran decided to keep the check for himself and returned to Xander Corporation. Suddenly, he heard the roar of an engine behind him. Then Kiran remembered how Fabian had nearly crashed into him and killed him in his quest to propose to Snow at Xander Corporation's entrance. He cursed in his heart. To think they'd actually try to fucking kill me like this. He jumped to the side. When he turned around to look, he saw that it was Snow's Ferrari. Kiran wiped off the sweat on his brow. He did not have a single scratch on him from the fights, but he almost died in a car crash. Seriously? Was she in such a hurry to become a widow? Snow unbuckled her seatbelt and ran over to him once she got out of the car. Kiran was on guard. Was she going to stab him? Snow threw herself into his arms and started crying. Kiran was stunned, but he already figured that Snow had come over because she was worried. Since she could not get in, she got even more worried. When she saw him, her anxiety and excitement made her lose control of the vehicle. That was why she had nearly run him over. Her anxiety and excitement extinguished his anger. Then he smiled. Ahem. When Snow heard him clear his throat, she realized that she had lost her composure. She quickly let him go and turned her head to wipe her tears away. Ah. Kiran suddenly clutched his chest. I've been injured. Where? Snow thought he was telling the truth. By a cannonball running straight into me. Kiran grinned. Realizing that she had fallen for his lies, Snow gnashed her teeth in anger. Throwing yourself into my arms won't make me fall for you, by the way. Kiran immediately regained his composure. All the tender affection in Snow's heart was replaced by rage. I get sick just looking at you. Besides, why would I need to throw myself into anyone's arms to make them fall for me? They don't need it, considering how beautiful I am. Plenty of men are going out of their way to woo me. Let them woo you then. I can file for a divorce as well. Kiran headed to the car. I'm far too handsome. Women just throw themselves into my arms when they see me and take advantage of me. They even... Shut up, you bastard! Snow shouted at Kiran while stomping her feet. Kiran had already gotten into the car and was about to leave. Hey, wait for me! Snow ran over to the car. Kiran had wanted to drive off to tease Snow, but Snow's phone started ringing in the car. When he saw that it was the bank calling her, he decided not to drive away. The most important thing right then was the Xander family owing the bank money. Snow had already reached the car at this point. When she saw her phone ringing, she remembered that she had received a call from the bank this morning asking her to clear all her debt immediately. Anxiety filled her entire being. Kiran saw the change in her expression. Snow did her best to compose herself before she answered the call and said graciously, Hello, Mr. Murphy. Miss Snow, you have to clear the debt you owe to the bank by today, or we'll auction off Xander Corporation. The bank manager, Gray Murphy's cold voice came through. Snow looked conflicted and angry, but she still tried to control her emotions as she said, Mr. Murphy, it's only been a day since you gave me the 1-week deadline. I have 6 more days. We have already gathered a few $100 million. We'll clear the debt on time, I promise you. My superiors are demanding the money. You have to clear it today, or I won't be able to help you. Gray pretended to sound troubled. Snow's face turned stark pale, and her blood ran cold. Was Xander Corporation really going to go bankrupt? When she remembered how the 3 big families had driven them into a corner, despair filled Snow's heart, and misery showed in her eyes. Chapter 38. Suddenly, she felt something warm envelop her hand. When she looked down, she saw that Kiran was holding her hand tightly. His grip was warm and comfortable. She felt relaxed, as if she was soaking in a warm bathtub. Kiran then grabbed the phone and hung up. Let's go to the bank. In her surprise, Snow looked at Kiran before she said bitterly, Even if we go, it's pointless. We owe the bank $3 billion. While we'd be able to get that sum of money if we sold Xander Corporation, no one would buy the company. All of Snow's pride bled out of her, and she looked helpless and alone. Set the bank as our destination. Kiran started up the car and drove out of Neptune Cove's parking lot. Did you get the money? But Snow shook her head after her question. Even if they did give you the money, it's only a little over $1 billion. It's not enough. She looked outside the window. My only regret is letting down the York family. I wasn't able to help keep Dragon's Mount for them. She was protecting Dragon's Mount. Kiran suddenly felt a strange tug in his heart. He said nothing, nor did he give the checks to Snow. He just focused on driving. At that moment, he had already decided to treat the Xander family as his responsibility. He was not boasting when he said anyone who wanted to attack the Xander family would have to go through him first. Snow felt resigned at Kiran's decision to go to the bank, but also knew that she could not change his mind. She set up the GPS to direct him to Garden Street's Bayville Bank. 15 minutes later, Kiran parked at the bank's entrance. Snow stopped Kiran from getting out of the car. "I'm going to call a friend of mine at the bank. I'll try asking her to help us." Kiran just stared at the bank and said nothing. Snow found that she could not read his thoughts. Even so, she still called Alina Sullivan, her high school classmate. She hoped that Alina could help her get a few more days' leeway. At that moment, Alina was sitting on Gray's lap with her arms hooked around his neck. She was all dolled up and had a thick layer of foundation on her face. She looked at Gray seductively while she puckered up her red lips to kiss him. Then, her phone rang, and the lusty atmosphere was destroyed. Alina glared at her phone in annoyance. When she noticed that it was Snow calling her, she wanted to reject the call. Gray stopped her. "Don't reject it. She must be calling to ask for help. You can get her to owe you a favor and push her into even deeper despair." So, Alina picked up her phone and answered it. "Snow? To what do I owe the favor?" Snow knew that Alina was a vain person who loved taking advantage of people. She said, "I was passing by the bank and got you a gift. Could you come out so that I can give it to you?" Alina had her phone on loudspeaker, so Gray heard what she said as well. Mockery and disdain showed on their faces. Alina said pridefully, "I'm really busy today, but thanks for the thought." She exchanged a look with Gray. Both of them looked smug. They wanted to hear how Snow would plead for Alina's help. "Alina." Snow wanted to beg her to come out, but Kiran could not bear to listen any longer. He grabbed her phone and hung up. Alina and Gray had wanted to seize the chance to humiliate Snow, which was why they were surprised when they heard the busy ringtone. Snow turned to Kiran with frustration in her eyes. "Why did you do that?" "That's just going to... You're seriously so useless." Kiran rebuked her. "Hurry up and divorce me already." "What?" Snow had thought that Kiran hung up because he did not want her to ask others for help and wanted to protect her, but he just yelled at her instead. He even demanded a divorce. Anger started boiling in her. Meanwhile, Kiran got out of the car. Snow had to follow him. Gray and Alina felt annoyed because the call had ended so abruptly. Snow was so arrogant. Who did she think she was? She owed the bank money, and they had every right to walk all over her. They stormed toward the entrance and wanted to humiliate Snow face to face. Chapter 39. "Snow Xander, have you come to clear your debt?" Gray asked when he saw Snow at the entrance. But Snow did not have the money, so she anxiously said, "Please calm down, Mr. Murphy. My phone signal was really bad, so the call was disconnected. I hung up on you." Kiran interrupted her coldly. He looked at Gray. "Do you have a problem with that?" "You did?" Alina sneered. "Who are you, and where did you come from, you idiot?" Kiran answered. "I'm Snow's husband." "Snow's husband?" Alina and Gray asked at the same time. Gray then snickered and gave Snow a mocking look. "If you're already married, it's perfectly fine for you to let Mr. Fabian have some fun with you for a few days. Why kick up such a fuss?" Snow's face turned pale as she asked coldly, "What did you say?" Gray smiled. "Don't you understand what I'm saying? You seriously don't know why the three big families are causing trouble for your family? Mr. Fabian wants to sleep with you. If you let him have some fun with you for a few days, your family's troubles will be all gone. Since you're already married, that means you're no longer a virgin. Sleeping with another man should be no big deal to you anymore." "Shut up!" Snow yelled at him. "I'm not such a dirty woman." Alina crossed her arms. "Yeah, so? When Xander Corporation goes bankrupt, you'll be free estate." But she was not done venting. She looked at Kiran. "When that happens, your wife will cheat on you right in front of your face." Gray laughed. "Just close your eyes and open your legs. Screw you." Kiran kicked Gray in the stomach. Gray screamed and was knocked off his feet. "You hit him?" Alina stomped her feet and shouted, "Not only are you refusing to pay back your debt, but you also hit someone. Call the police." 3 bodyguards rushed over. Snow finally realized what had happened. While she was angry at Kiran for being so impulsive, she still said, "You're the ones who said such demeaning things first. That's why he hit Mr. Murphy." "Demeaning? Who's going to prove that I was demeaning?" Alina shouted with a dark expression. "Don't let him escape. Make sure he's locked behind bars forever." Kiran then slapped Alina. Snow's face was drained of all color, and she held Kiran back while she hissed at him, Calm down. Kiran looked at the three bodyguards. Fuck off. The bodyguards trembled and backed down instinctively. Gray clutched his stomach. Don't let him. The remainder of his sentence died on his tongue because not only did Kiran not run away, but he also strode into the bank. Snow was worried that Kiran would kick up another fuss. If anyone accused him of robbery, they would be in trouble. Stealing was a major offense. She grabbed Kiran's arm. Calm down. Gray scrambled to his feet and looked at Snow. If you don't clear your debt today, I'm going to put Xander Corporation on auction immediately. But I'm also going to make sure that Xander Corporation won't be able to collect or borrow a single penny. I'm going to make you watch as your company goes bankrupt. Call the police. Have them capture this savage. Gray's shouts caused the bank to fall silent. Everyone inside looked at Kiran nervously and was worried that he would resort to violence again. Kiran walked to a counter and sat down before he tossed a check at the bank teller. Convert this to cash. Due to fear, the bank teller did not think much when she saw the check and wanted to convert it to cash. But when she saw that a total of 400 million was written on the check, she was shocked. They did not have that much cash in the bank. Gray could not understand why she was surprised and simply thought Kiran gave her a fake check. He sneered. It must be a fake check. Good. We can charge you with another felony when the police arrive. The bank teller shook her head. That's not it. Gray scowled. What is it then? There's too much money written on the check. We don't have that much cash in the bank, the bank teller said. We don't have the cash. How much money can a broke bastard like him have? Gray yelled at her and walked over. He grabbed the check. When he saw it was worth $400 million, he was surprised as well. In the next second, he smiled sinisterly and handed the check to the bank teller. Keep it. We'll treat this as part of the debt Xander Corporation has to clear. The bank teller took the check, gave Kiran a wary look, and put the check away. Kiran very calmly gave the bank teller another check. Convert this to cash. Chapter 40. When the bank teller saw that it was worth 200 million, she was shocked again. Just where was he getting all the money? She looked at Gray for help again. But Gray was delighted. In the meantime, he started laughing at Kiran for being an idiot. Continue treating it as part of the debt Xander Corporation has to clear. Convert this to cash, then. Kiran gave the bank teller another check worth 1 billion. Use it to clear their debt. Gray was ecstatic. Convert this to cash, too. Kiran gave the bank teller the 2 billion check Montel gave him. Same thing, Gray said without even looking at it. Kiran then scoffed. Why are you laughing? If you owe a debt, you clear it. That's the natural order of things, Gray said arrogantly. How much does Xander Corporation owe now? Kiran asked teasingly. Along with interest, 3 billion. Gray extended 3 fingers. His expression was one of pure smugness, as if he was saying that Kiran could not possibly clear that debt. And how much did I ask you to convert to cash? Kiran asked the bank teller with a smile. Gray looked at her. It's not enough, is it? How much do they still owe? He gave us 3.6 billion, the bank teller said nervously. She was surprised. But what? How much? Gray, Alina, and even Snow asked in surprise. 3.6 billion. The bank teller repeated the total. The three of them looked at Kiran in dumbfounded shock. He gave them an extra $600 million. Where did he get his money from? I want that extra $600 million in cash. Count the money properly, and I want to see it right in front of my eyes. If I have a penny less, I'm going to sue the bank for fraud, Kiran said calmly. All the smugness in Gray vanished, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. When he looked at Kiran, nervousness was blatant in his eyes. He wanted to take $600 million out. They did not have that much money. Moreover, if his superiors learned about this, they would also look into it because it was clear that Kiran was causing trouble. They would want to know the reason behind it. Also, Gray had to bear the responsibility of not having enough money to give to a client as well. But he could not possibly bear that responsibility. After weighing the pros and cons, he put on a smile, braced himself, and went to Kiran. Sir, why don't I transfer the money to your bank account? I want cash, don't you understand? Kiran mocked him. Are you an idiot? Gray gnashed his teeth together, but he did not dare retort. He just glared at Alina. Kiran was calling him an idiot, just like Alina called him just now. But he still spoke to Kiran nicely. Sir, I misjudged you. Please forgive me. "Who called the police?" At that moment, 2 police officers came in and asked. "No one did. I just tripped over my own feet." Gray did not dare to ask the police officers to capture Kiran. Gray and Alina were the ones in the wrong, and considering how much money Kiran had, the police officers would not be able to do anything to him even if they arrested him. In fact, Gray and Alina might be the ones in trouble. The police officers' expressions turned dark. That's not how a manager should act. "I'm terribly sorry," Gray apologized. "He's an idiot," Kiran said calmly. The police officers were stunned and looked at Kiran with a frown. Gray was so terrified that his legs trembled. He said to the police officers, "That's right, I'm an idiot, so I tripped over my own feet." Then, he signaled for Alina to do the same thing. Alina looked embarrassed, but she did not dare go against her manager's orders. She put on a smile and said, "I'm an idiot too." She had called Kiran an idiot earlier, but now she had to call herself an idiot. This was even more humiliating than being hit, but she could only endure the shame. "Be more careful in the future, then." The police officers did not want to be nosy, so they turned to leave. "Please wait," Kiran called out to them. "What is it?" the police officers asked with a frown. "I want to take $600 million out in cash, but there are too many idiots here, and I'm worried. Could you help me monitor them?" Kiran asked in a tone that gave off the impression that he was a weak, defenseless man. He still wanted to take money? Gray was stunned silent. He was such an idiot. And he even admitted it. He was going to be done for if Kiran took that amount of cash out. So, he pulled a long face and looked at Kiran to beg for mercy.